always have to build the structure firstly. So show a clear structure is the number one important thing for your assessment writing. And it will help you to refer back when you do your self-check. It will also help the assessors to review your work. So always remember, make it clear in terms of structure. When you have the structure down, you will know how many things you will put for each section. And for the assessment one, this is the recommended structure. I listed the structure here, including the introduction, then literature review or narrative review, case analysis, conclusion, and reference. Right? They are mainly 5 main structures. Let's also refer back to the assessment file. For the assessment one, you are required to write 2 major things. One is a selection of the construction materials, then followed by the construction methodology. So it's not enough for you to only write these 2 sections. Before that, you have to write a section of introduction. So in this section, you need to briefly overview the project. This project is located in Hamilton Street, Hamilton Hill. So you might be able to find the information of the project. So give it a brief overview of the project, then followed by the purpose of the case study. Right, you can actually find some information from the requirements, and also you will also need to do some research by yourself to write the purpose of the case study or the brief overview of the project. Then followed by the study scope. Here is a tip about how you could organize your structure. For example, you are required to provide 2,500 words, right? 2,500 words for your writing. And here you got 4 major sections for writing. So reference won't account words, right? So you will have 4 major sections that will account for the words. Then 2,500 words, if divided by 4 evenly, you will have 650 words for each section, if that is divided evenly. But practically it's not evenly divided. So for the main part, you will have more words, right? It will shorten the other sections, like the introduction and the conclusion. So let's say you have 300 words for your introduction and conclusion. What does that mean? 300 words means 10 to 15 sentences, right? Means 10 to 15 sentences. So that will make it pretty easy for you to finish, right? 10 to 15 sentences actually very easy to finish. So this is the tips that I always use in my academic writing. I always have an overview of how many words roughly I will need for a writing task. Then I will roughly organize a structure of how many sections I will put in my writing. Then I use the words divided by the section numbers. I will get the roughly amount of words for each section. Then I will get how many sentences I will put in that section. That will make your writing very clearly and efficient when you organize that. So this is a tip that I always do in my academic writing. So for the introduction, maybe you will have 15 sentences, which is pretty not hard to conduct. Then for the next section, we can call it a literature review or narrative review. The literature review is actually for the academic writing. If you're gonna publish your writings, you better call it literature review. So it's the section that you review the existing papers, documents. But since our project is a practical writing, it's a practical project. It's not an academic writing. So we could call it a narrative review. This section is the section that will demonstrate that you have a clear understanding of the best practices and the compliance of the codes like NCC. So from this section, you clearly demonstrate that you have understand the knowledge and the requirements, the compliance. So in this section, you could include two subsections. Firstly, the construction materials in low-rise construction. In this section, you can demonstrate that you understand the commonly used materials for the low-rise construction. Then you understand the properties, the differences, the advantages and disadvantages of the different materials, right? So you could compare the common materials between bricks, concrete, timbers, steel frames, etc. By the comparison and discussion, you clearly demonstrate that you have understanding the best practice, right? So this is the first subsection that you can include. Then followed by another subsection is methods. After you discuss the materials, then you move to the methods of how to use that materials to do the construction. So in this subsection, you could organize in different ways. For example, you can organize in terms of different elements, like walls, footings, ground floors, foundations, roofs, etc. You can also organize that in other ways, and this is a way that I suggest that I could think of. Then you could follow by the safety requirements. You have already learned the load bearing, the stress distribution, the fire corrosion protection. All these stuff are related to the safety requirement. So it will explain how you will do to improve the safety when you constructing using the materials. This is not related to the material that you select. So we haven't go to that section. So in this section, you discuss the current best practices and the current knowledges you have, right? And along as with the performance like thermal, sound, energy efficiency, daylighting, so on and so forth. So generally in this section, the narrative review, it is used for you to demonstrate the understanding of the best practices, understanding of the construction materials in low-rise construction. You understand the methods of the construction. So this is the section function. Then we move to the main body of the case study writing. After you demonstrate that you understand the best practice, then based on the project requirement, what materials you will select for this project and what construction methods you will use for this project. So this is a part that you can write. We can call it a case analysis. Two major subsections you can include in this section. One is selection of the construction materials. Right. For this project, what kind of materials you will use? Then you explain the reason. You explain the project, the material you select. Then you explain the reason why you selected these materials. Then you discuss the material properties. So this is also the reason that you will select the material for this project. For the properties, you could discuss the strength, the stability, the fire resistance level, energy efficiency, the thermal and sound performance, etc. So you could discuss the properties of the material you select for this project. Then in the next subsection, you could discuss the construction methodology upon the selection of your materials. Here the structure that you can use for the construction methodology subsection. You can discuss the soil classification, the building classification, type of foundations, building frame, wall systems, roof systems, door and windows, a sequence of the main construction works. Then in this subsection, you could divide into the substructure and the external superstructure. So this one could help you to organize this subsection. In each subsection, you need to explain the reason and how you will conduct for this work. Like for example, for the soil classification, what you will do to get that information. So anyone can try to explain how you will write for the soil classification.
For the soil classification, I think you would first write why you would need to do the soil classification, and then you would talk about the certain tests you would have to do.
Right.
And then, yeah, I think that's generally what you would have to do.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
For this project, you could firstly try to get that information from the project documents, right? You will have a lot of drawings and documents that you can look through, right? And you can try to find the soil classification from that documents. But what if you cannot find the information from there? What you will write?
Do like a SWOT investigation?
Right, that's very good. If you cannot find the soil classification over the documents, as a construction manager, you probably have to hire a professional to conduct an investigation of the soil, right? This is a very important sequence before you determine the building classification and the specific construction methods. And yeah, this is how you write that. maybe you hire a professional to do the investigation for the soil classification. But for your writing, if you cannot find the specific information of the soil classification, you could research online, and you can see you can find there are general information of the soil classifications for Perth, for the construction purpose. Based on that information, you propose your building classification, your construction method. So what I mean is that this is a logic that you can organize your writing. Give the reason, give the method, then give the way you would do based on the information you get. So this is a logic. As long as you provide the clear logic of how you write that, it will be good. So is that clear?
Yeah.
All right. And for the other subsections, always remember, give the clear logic, reason, and the work you will conduct. We have 2,500 words for the entire case study. I think this memory, the third one, case analysis will make up maybe 1,000 to 1,500 words, maybe. It's manually. There are two subsections. Each subsection will make up maybe 700 words, 700 to 800 words, 30 to 40 sentences for each subsection. Then you have a clear structure. Then followed by conclusion. The most important part for the conclusion is the summary of the key construction insights. Then you could also conclude the importance of the material selection and the method. And also you can provide any reflections from your learning. So the important one is to summarize the key insights. For the other subsections, you could organize that relatively freely, as long as you provide the summary of the key construction insights. Then the last part is a reference. So use the required style of a reference. In your writing, wherever you cite the words, cite the ideas, materials from other documents, you put a note, the number in the text, then give a clear reference in the last sections.
So rather than like I can't remember what the word is, but rather than actually putting author, comma, date, just putting the number, and then in case you have to do that a lot through the whole thing.
You are required to use the Chicago 17, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is that style?
Isn't that insight referencing? Like,
Isn't Chicago 17 you're always supposed to do in-text referencing?
yeah, in text referencing.
Yeah, in text reference, then you have to do that.
But you were saying something about like putting the number there. Is that something
Oh yeah,
different?
putting a number is another reference style.
Okay.
Yeah, it's another reference style. But for the Chicago 17s, maybe it's not a number. Yeah, it has the authors and the year.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to use like this instead of number. A number is another reference style. But since you are required, required as a Chicago 17, then you have to follow that style.
Yeah.
Okay, is that clear for the assessment writing structure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. You have any questions?
No.
Yes.
How would you reference like the NCC codes?
The same way. If the same way you use the Chicago reference here, then in terms of the name, you could use the ABCB. ABCB is the publisher of the NCC.
Okay.
Then the year.